You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Podcast. I have Tukan. He's the CEO of a company called LeadSift. It's like sifting and sorting, so the website is LeadSift.com. So Tukan, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
Yeah, tell me, what's the premise of LeadSift?
Yeah, so LeadSift is a sales intelligence software company that helps other B2B technology companies identify which accounts to go after and sell based on signals of buying intent.
Oh, okay. That's smart. Yeah, because you have a whole bunch of leads. Just because they asked for a free report or they gave you your email doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to be good candidates to call on.
That's correct. Conversely, if you do not have a lot of inbound leads, which is a case for a lot of clients, what they do is then they go after their total addressable market. And just because someone fits the buyer persona doesn't necessarily mean they have a need for your software at that point. So we help in sort of both those cases.
Okay, so what are some of the signals that your software will look for? Like, how does it know, what data does it need to make a decision or help you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, in a B2B setting, right, it's almost impossible to tell or with confidence that someone is certainly going to buy your product or your services. That's the reality. So with that being said, what we try to attempt is pick up a bunch of different signals that are out there and leverage that as proxies to make an educated guess or make a prediction about which company are going to buy your software or your solution. Now, to give some specific examples, a signal of intent or buying intent could be if we see someone talking to or about your competitor or a complementary company of yours. A signal of intent could be when someone is, we see researching about an industry topic that is of interest to what you guys do. Or a signal of intent could be if we see someone all of a sudden hiring for a bunch of different people or roles that your software can help them with. That could be a signal of intent. A signal of intent could be if someone is attending a trade show and conference in your, within your industry. That could be a signal of intent or interest. So there are all these different signals that are out there. For example, a signal of intent could be if someone has hired a new, business executive. They could be making a new purchase decision. That could be a signal of intent. So there are all these different trigger events that we look for to make this inference, this prediction that a company is going to buy your software solution.
Yeah, but how do you get the background data? How do you even know where to look and how to collect all this data?
So we basically crawl the public web. And what I mean by that is your blogs, forums, social networks, job boards, event sites, YouTube comments, SEC filings, you name it. We basically, our system, they're basically crawling 24/7, looking for when someone is showing or exhibiting one of those signals. So, if you had a team of researchers, they would manually go through every blog, forum, LinkedIn, Twitter, blogs, and SEC filings, job boards to see these triggers. We basically automate that process.
So how much data can you pick up? Is it, depending on the industry the person's in,
Are they like amazed at how much stuff you can pick up, or some industries hard to get data for?
That's a great question, actually. It is true. It is dependent industry to industry. I mean, we are specifically focused on B2B technology industry. But let's say if someone is selling a B2B packaging software or B2B, chemical manufacturer, there will not be enough signal. So we do not serve those industries. We are focused very much on the B2B technology sector. So, anyone in a software space, anyone services, management consulting, there is a ton of data and signals out there.
How do you know, though, that a signal corresponds to what may be of interest to them? Like, how did you develop the initial algorithms or heuristics to determine what associates with what?
That's a great question. So there is some input that the customer gives us. And specifically what the customer tells us is a few things. They tell us the industries they play in, the business categories they play in. So whether it's a recruiting software, whether it's a marketing automation software, whether it's a legal tech software or IT security software, whatever it is, they define that. From there, we further map that business category to a list of their competitors or complementary companies in that ecosystem. Then we map it to a list of keywords or topics within that vertical. And then what we do is we also map it to industry events that are happening within that vertical. So once we get that, that's what we feed our algorithm to say, hey, these are the competitors, these are the keywords, these are the topics, and these are the industry events. Go ahead, search across the internet and see when someone is, talking to or about these triggers. That's how we get the signals.
Okay. And I would guess too, do you get feedback from customers? Oh, you were right about this, or we got 3 new contracts from this particular match that you did, or this particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are definitely measured on the impact we have, our insights or our signals have on their pipeline. So, a lot of the times we integrate with their CRM systems like Salesforce. So we can see, we pushed these many signals, these many leads, these many of those leads were converted into a meeting. From a meeting, it became an opportunity. From an opportunity, it became, a closed won or a closed lost. So we can get all of those insights. And we see a lot of that happening. So that's how we get sort of measured. That's how clients can figure out. It's pretty quick for them to figure out an ROI using our software.
So, I don't want to give away proprietary stuff, but what can you say that is really, strange associations or maybe obvious associations that are really great spots?
Yeah. There are, it depends, to be honest with you, industry to industry, client to client. For example, one of our customers, they're in the IT security space. What they mentioned was anytime they see so they have a list of target accounts. So they sell into large Fortune 1000 companies, right? And anytime they see any of these competitors researching about a specific industry topic that they are interested in tracking, they pick that up as a signal, and they have seen tremendous success when they use that signal to follow up with them right away. Versus if they see exactly the same group of companies engaging with a competitor, they don't get that kind of response rate or engagement on their outreach. And the thing that they found out was, in this case, that a lot of the times when they're talking to a competitor, they might be too further along the buying journey. Versus when they're starting to research on a specific security-related topic, the chances of them having an engagement with this client of ours and having a meeting and moving it down the pipeline is a lot higher. So that's an interesting, I guess, correlation that we have seen, for example. Another one.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Okay.
Another one that we see ourselves is, when we see people hiring for roles that our customers have. So, for example, if we see someone hiring for a sales development rep or a bunch of those roles, sales development representatives, there's a very high likelihood of them doubling down on their outbound prospecting or outbound marketing efforts, and the chances of them needing a tool like ours goes up a lot higher. So we use that as a pretty interesting signal.
So what about time to respond? How much of a correlation have you seen there?
Yeah,
If you're able to follow up on a lead within seconds or minutes.
yeah, that's a good question. What we have noticed is there's a decline after a week. So if a signal happens and you do not act on it for a week, that there is a decay, but it doesn't need to be within minutes or seconds. The other thing, though, what we noticed is, there might be a signal from an account that is, whether it's talking to a competitor or showing interest about a specific topic, but that's just, at any given point in time. There is some value in tracking the same company engage with different topics over a month, because then you might see, hey, they engaged with 2 competitors, 3 industry topics, they were hiring for a specific role, and they also sent someone to attend a marketing conference. All of this might not happen in a day, but it might start showing up within a month. Once you look at the data holistically from a month, you can then say, hey, there's enough proof within this company that there might be something happening. They might be going through this buying journey. So let's go after them. So that's how we look at it. It doesn't necessarily need to be, that you pick up a lead, you need to follow up with them within seconds, unlike an inbound lead that comes to your website. I don't know if I explained that correctly or not.
No, that's fine. You're saying there's a sweet spot, but you don't have to be crazy and jump on a person seconds after they request something.
It's not. That's exactly it.
And all right. So, do you grade a lead based on, I guess, how many factors seem to line up? How juicy they are? How to lead they are?
So we have an account level intent score that we use, which uses a whole bunch of different attributes to score an account. It starts from what kind of engagement they're having, how frequently they're having, how many people within that organization is having that engagement, who within that organization also has that engagement. So for example, if you're selling into marketing and an intern engages versus a VP of engagement, a VP of marketing engages, the scores change. It also includes factors like, what is their baseline engagement versus, within this last month. It also takes into consideration the size of the company. IBM might have 10 engagements about a topic, given the fact that IBM has, 100,000 employees. 10 people doesn't really mean that much. But if a company has 50 employees and 3 of them engage with a topic, that might get bumped higher. So we combine all of this into a machine learning model, which basically spits out a probabilistic score between 0 to 100 of where they're in the buying journey. So that's how we score these accounts.
Okay. Does the lead scoring really correlate with a likelihood of success to get the person, or is it more of a loose?
It's a good question. I do not have enough empirical evidence, to be honest with you, Richard, correlating the score of a lead and the success of them closing a deal. What we know is there is a correlation between the number of people within an organization that is showing different signals versus them engaging with you when you reach out to them. There is definitely a correlation there.
Okay. What other types of data do you think will be helpful to you? And are you able to get it, or are you still trying to get it? Or is that too internal to talk about?
You mean different sources of data?
Yeah. Are there any additional dream sources of data you'd like to get? Help you?
The way we look at it, Richard, is in a B2B setting, we only look at publicly available data, right? Like things that are out there. And we are basically trying to pick up these digital footprints that a buyer might have left somewhere to help us make that prediction. And there are one of our goals is to crawl the entire web, but it's not enough to crawl the entire web, but crawl the right kind of data from the web to extract that signal. So for example, an interesting source of data would be to figure out what kind of technology they're using, right? By looking at the JavaScript tag of the website, if you can extract that, and when did they start using it, or did they switch one out with another? That might be an interesting signal. In sales intelligence, that's called technographic data. So that might be an interesting signal to add. Another signal could be if we could merge the first party data, meaning if we could see someone showing an intent signal on our LeadSift stream and match that with what people are seeing on their current website, and see if there's a correlation and then change the score accordingly. That could be another interesting signal to add. So there are all these different sources and signals that we have in our roadmap to add and combine, because the reality is there is no one single source of intent signal out there in a B2B setting. Like there is no one source that says, hey, this person is definitely going to buy from you, until and unless they pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, I want to buy from you. Outside of that happening, you are basically making a prediction. And when making a prediction, the more input parameters you have for your model, the better it is. It needs to be the right kind of input, but the more, the better. That helps you build a better model. So that's how we look at it.
Okay, that makes sense. So you said, what industries does this work well for, and which ones are tougher, and maybe any insight into why?
Yeah, so the industries that work best are B2B technology, B2B software as a service, SaaS industries. So any one of 20,000 software as SaaS businesses that works well. Where it doesn't work well, and by doesn't work well meaning where we do not pick up enough signals on them, would be companies that are very, very niche. So sometimes we work with clients that can only sell to companies that are using two specific software, because that's who they integrate with. In those cases, the number of signals goes down drastically. So that those are the cases it wouldn't work. Or when cases, if your solution, B2B solution is super niche, or you can only sell to 100 companies. So for example, we have a client that is piloting us. They can only sell to 400 airlines, and out of those 400 airlines, they can only sell to 70 currently. So it's a very, very, very niche market. They know every one of their customers. So in that case, an intelligence tool like ours doesn't provide that kind of additional incremental value.
Okay. So when someone signs up for your service, what's that process like? You start looking for the data for them, and then what's the back and forth interaction that makes it work or not?
So the way we do it is basically when they sign up, we do a demo. In the demo, we try to show them data that is tailored to them. Most of the times we have their competitors that we are tracking already historically. So we have some historical data. We show them the data. In the case that where we do not track that competitor or that or those keywords, what we do is we say, hey, give us those competitors that you have, the keywords that you have. We will go ahead and start crawling them. We'll crawl it for a week, collect some data, and then share the data with you, saying these are the accounts that showed interest. Does it make sense or not? So that's how we typically sell. So first we show them data that's relevant to them, tailored for them, to get them a sense of both the quality of the data and also the quantity. Because sometimes, we don't want to sell someone LeadSift where there's only 10 signals a week. So we want to prove out during the sales process that there is enough, and there's enough quality data out there for them to justify this investment.
And what level is that? I know it probably depends on the company, but how much data is needed for it to be worthwhile?
That's also a question, right? Depending on how big your target market is, but they should at least have 100 unique signals a week per customer. That's sort of the number. Our average is 200. That's what our average customers get on a weekly basis. Some of our customers get 1,000, some get 5,000, but the average is more like 200 a week.
Oh, wow. So what's the next step? A company signs up with you, they start getting signals. How about advice on how to handle the signals the right way versus the wrong way? Do you jump on them, or do you then just start sending information to that person, trying to warm them up as a lead? What's the recommendation?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we do quite a bit of hand holding when we onboard a customer. So we have a customer success team that works with the customer, first understanding their process, how they plan to action the data, what are their expectations from the data. Those are two very important things. And based on that, we then suggest, what would be the best way to activate or action our data, whether it's email, phone call, social selling, ads, or a combination of both. And what kind of keywords should they be tracking? What kind of events they should be tracking? What kind of competitors or trigger events should they be tracking? So there's quite a bit of training and onboarding involved right out of the gate. And then we have bi-weekly strategy calls, check-in calls, just to make sure that they're getting the right kind of data, they're getting results from it, and they're actioning it the right way.
What size enterprise is suitable for you?
So that's also a good question. So what we do is we do not go after large enterprises. Our sweet spot is companies between 50 to 500 employees. That's who we are going after. So not super early stage, a little bit further along, where they have a defined ICP, they definitely have a product market fit, they have a sales process built in. Now they want to turbocharge that. Those are the customers we are working with.
Any case study results on how much improvement some companies have gotten, or like their feedback?
There's plenty of them. I mean, starting from increasing clients' pipeline 100% month over month to getting opportunities created cheaper rate than Google AdWords, to booking 5 meetings every 100 people they reach out to from a cold outbound perspective. There's a bunch of different data points and case studies that we have published across all different verticals and customers of ours.
Okay. So what's the best way for folks to get in touch to take the first step and do a test drive or evaluate you?
The best way to do is go to LeadSift.com. They can request a demo, or they can request a free report where they fill in their competitors. We do an analysis and provide them data. Those are the best way. Just go to LeadSift.com and contact us there.
That's great. Well, Tukan, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Richard. Happy to be here.
You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.